What is up, everybody? I am Tim from Tim's School of Fish, a little bit hoarse.
And I'm Jake from Uncommon EDC.
And joining us tonight is Joe Mangiafico. Joe Mangiafico from Mangiafico Knives. How you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Good, man. Thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
I'm happy to be here. It was great to meet you at Blade Show Atlanta, and I've got your sticker over there on my my toolbox. So
very cool. So let's just shout out some folks here in the crowd. I see a lot of the usuals: Jeff Jackson, Mike Reese, Stacy, Space Ghost, Marco. How you guys doing?
What's going on, everyone?
I don't see any moderators yet, but you guys make sure to give them some love. Randy's WSG, Bluminati Ninja, Bluminati Ninja, and Cheeto Bandito, whatever his name is this week. There's Randy. What's up, Randy? Yeah. So Joe, we're going to get right into it. First, I'm going to tell them how I found you. So I was at Blade Show walking around, and I walked by your table, and you had a bunch of knives that had like fish themed scales on them and fish themed handles on them. And then I started talking to you, and I found out that you were also a saltwater fishing guide. So how did you get into both knives and saltwater fishing? Tell me how that started.
Yeah, so I've been a fly fisherman for like my whole life. My dad taught me when I was young, and then I studied fisheries management in college and everything. And but that college is where I started making knives. Yeah. And I had a really sad shop in my dorm room. Really, really rudimentary setup. But I was like, there's got to be, I want to incorporate some of my like trout fishing and everything into my knives. And so I landed on like a structural mosaic of the first one was a brook trout. And it's just, inlaid G10 in either micarta or other G10 with brass collars and everything. And I just kind of, kept developing it as a hobby. And I made a few other patterns, rainbow trout, brown trout, and some saltwater ones too, mahi and everything.
Nice.
But yeah, I've been, I guess I started as a freshwater guy, but I just fell in love with saltwater, and I like making the freshwater ones more. So
yeah.
Right.
So Jake, pop that knife back up there again, real quick. That picture.
Yeah, give me 1 second. Put that
Joe,
back up on screen.
Tell us what knife we're looking at here. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it. So on the left hand side, you've got the rainbow trout, and they've got that red band. Some people call it the watermelon knife, but
it could
be watermelon if you wanted to. I love watermelon.
Yeah.
But the middle one is the brook trout. They have those notorious blue halos with the red spots in the middle.
Yeah.
And a bunch of yellow spots around them. And they're really, my goal with them is like more of an impressionistic. I'm not going to be biologically accurate with my inlays. And then on the right is a brown trout, and they have they've got a bunch of big black spots with light brown skin, yellow bellies, and alternating kind of red and black spots.
So is that one of your knives, or is that
no, that's one of my customs. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So when I was walking by your table at Blade Show, that's exactly what caught my eye. I'm walking by there and I'm like, oh, trout knives.
They're colorful, man.
Yeah, man.
Polka dot knives.
Yeah. No, I love them.
Yeah, exactly. And I was telling you before the show, but I actually saw him at Blade Show in 2023. Somehow missed you this year, but had a video on my phone favorited, so I could eventually go back and purchase one, but just haven't gotten one yet.
I'll hook you up.
And you have beads that match with those as well now too, right?
I do, yeah. So I've done, mostly the brookie beads. I haven't done the brown trout is not the most popular one, so okay. I'm not really inclined to make beads for it. But yeah, I have rainbow beads and the brook trout beads. Those have done pretty well.
Very cool. And how do people go about getting them outside of Blade Show? Do you do regular drops, or is it kind of custom commissions?
So I went full time about 2 years ago, and figuring out the balance of like how I make my knives, how I sell my knives, how I do anything has been a huge learning experience. And for a long time, my books were open for folders, and they are not open for like unlimited for folders. They're open for a certain model that I'm making. So I do accept orders for fixed blades, definitely. But my folders, I'm kind of phasing out of one model and moving into another model, and so I'm trying to push that. But people can reach out to me on email or Instagram, and we can get them on the books.
Okay, perfect. And I'm just going to pull up your most recent Instagram post so we can see an example of one of those customs as well.
So you started with fixed blades, right?
I did, yeah.
And then moved into folders. How much more difficult is it to get a folder dialed in right?
Let's see. You guys only have like an hour, he said.
Yeah.
No, man, the learning curve with folders is really something else. I mean, especially when you're doing them fully by hand.
Right.
When you got CNC machines, when you're dialed in CAD and other design softwares, it's a bit different. And I had a little bit of experience with that, but for the most part, it's like making a plastic knife first, making sure it works, and then and then going from there. But once you get like patterns and drill templates dialed, it's the folder geometry is okay. Then the challenge is like, this detent doesn't feel exactly how I want it to be. Like, how many hours do I want to spend on this? And
right.
If it's excuse me, if it's not perfect, I don't want to sell it. And so detents, lock fits, and everyone wants something different. I usually shoot for like a 15% or like not 15, 25 to 30% lockup with folder with liner locks and frame locks anyway. And I recently had a customer that was like, they bought the knife and they said, yeah, can you just like fit it all the way over? I'm like, yeah, I can. But it's not what's he's like, I'm a farmer, I just want it to be all the way. I'm like, okay, great.
He wanted the lock bar all the way over, like 100%?
Well, not all the way over. I was like, I could do like 60% for you. Is that it? And he was like, okay. And a lot of like the more production style frame locks, you see that going all the way over. But generally, it's the tiny details that really eat up way more time. Like sometimes I'll make a batch of folders that it goes together as smooth as a batch of fixed blades.
Right.
But sometimes there's 3 knives in the batch that take 3 times as long as the rest of the batch. And
right.
It can get complicated real quick.
Right. And for the scales on that folder, is that something that's interchangeable, or are they basically hand finished to match that exact model of knife? And so
that one, anyone with bolsters, well, yeah, really any of my custom folders, they're fit to that knife because I'm grinding them flush with the titanium liners. So I do have a pretty fun plan for an interchangeable scaled knife that, if someone wants they're feeling like a rainbow trout today, they want to, rock a rainbow trout in their pocket or a brook trout or mahi or something, they can, take the hardware out and swap them out.
Right. Depends on what they're fishing for that day.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you were in college, what the hell made you decide, hey, I think I'm going to make knives? Were you like, so I know if you were a fisherman, you always had some sort of knife with you. So were you always a knife guy? And while you were in college, what made you decide to set up a little shop?
Yeah, and I wouldn't call it a shop, but it was I had very patient dorm mates, roommates that would let me do it. But so I've always been a knife guy. My dad was a big knife collector, not on the custom side, but he really liked yeah, and he just always had a nice knife in his pocket, and that was just something that as a kid, I was like, I want that.
Yeah.
And so really, I think the thing that made me start making knives was boredom, but also like just that I have a horrible ADHD, so I'm like, I got to do something,
Right.
Right.
And I had moved from Atlanta, Georgia to Burlington, Vermont, and I'd never really experienced a winter before, and so I was like, I gotta figure something out. So yeah, I bought a bar of steel, and actually I went to usanifemaker.com and I bought a bar of steel, and they had some scales, just rectangle, carbon fiber or something. But I didn't have a belt grinder or anything like that. I used a file to file the bevels away. It took a month or something, and then, but yeah, I made one, and then I was like, I can do better than that. I can make another. And so,
yeah, then you were hooked. Get it?
Yeah. And that continued. And here I am. I'm an addict. So
Thank you, Beef, for the donation. So Beefer Baron, he's a longtime subscriber of mine and Jake's. He's a big fisherman too. He's up there
awesome.
in Michigan. So,
nice. I've fished a bit in Michigan.
Yeah. And you're basically full-time into knife making and fishing now, right? So
yeah. So basically, from June until late September, early October, I'm a fly fishing guide here on Cape Cod, and full time with that. And so I'm not making too many knives during that time, but
right.
I am right now because I got orders to fill, and I'm just working way long days. But it's not like winter production. And then really, we get our first big storm in the fall, and I'm just like, it's time to get back in the shop. And so I put away all the rods and just, yeah, but yeah, fully self-employed. Yeah, I love guiding, but it's the grass is always greener. When I first start guiding, it really right after Blade Show every summer, I'm like, man, I just miss those, I miss those 14-hour days in the shop getting ready for Blade Show. And then, of course, in May, I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait to guide. But,
right.
Yeah.
Which one do you draw more satisfaction or enjoyment from? Catching that fish or making that knife?
Ooh, it's from some show, this quote that I'll say, but fishing, I love fly fishing. And it was like, when you get that hook up, especially on a fly rod with a big saltwater fish, especially, you remember that forever.
Yeah.
But working really hard to have something like tangible that like someone is stoked to own, that really, that's my buzz right there.
Yeah.
I would say knives. Now it didn't used to be this way, but now knives are a bigger passion for me than fishing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a lot of crossover from people who are booking those guided fishing tours to people who are buying your knives?
Yeah, there's a few. It's really funny.
Cool.
In my customer base, that I would say it's like 60% people who collect knives and fish,
Right.
and appreciate fish. But the other 40% is just knife collectors who like unique stuff. And I feel like a lot of knife collectors, like, they just like to see someone kind of do what they love and support it. I'm really grateful for that.
Right.
But yeah, so and a lot of my clients, my guiding clients, they'll usually, I design for Boker as well, so
Right.
on licensing contracts. So Boker mass produces my designs, and they do a great job. And they have knives a lot more affordable than my customs because they're not handmade by me. But so yeah, usually they'll pick up one or two of those, and I recommend those for Christmas gifts and that kind of thing.
Right. And I'll pull that up here too. So it's not identical to the Brookie, although it's a same design. It looks like maybe it's just been blown up a little bit. Is that right?
Yeah, and that's funny. That's actually it's because that's an older one.
Okay.
In production collaborations like that, it usually takes about 2 years from submission to product launch.
Right.
So I've got like, I don't know, 3 or 4 models in the works that have been I submitted. I don't know exactly when, but yeah, it's like it took 2 years. So I submitted that knife. Then 2 years later, that knife launched. And then, in that time, that was 5 or 6 years ago, I kind of changed my methods and everything. So it kind of looks like a different product. But the cool thing about that Boker version is that all the inlays are, the blue halos obviously are G10. But all the other brook trout spots are alternating brass and copper, and I used to use a lot of that, and it was really, I liked the product better, but it was just a lot harder to work with, getting everything flush. But yeah, it's fun to see how things change.
Right.
Well, are you happy just doing custom stuff, or do you have any desire to get a CNC machine and just start pumping them out?
It's funny. Like, a lot of people associate getting a CNC machine with, like, therefore they just pump them out. It's not
Right.
necessarily the case. I worked for, I kind of got like an apprenticeship. I worked for 4 years or 3 years for Lucas Burnley in both here in Cape Cod, and then he moved to Bend, Oregon, and that's why I moved to Oregon. And he's got a big CNC. It's a 10-tool Haas, and I wouldn't say he pumps them out. He does very detailed high-end customs, but uses a CNC machine to do some crazy things. So I kind of look at it as a tool, and yeah, it would improve. It would increase the volume probably, but it takes some serious skill to grind a bevel on a CNC, without an engineering degree.
Right.
And like a lot of guys, they'll use the CNC for all the pilot holes and everything like that, but those bevels are a lot of times still hand ground unless they're a trained machinist.
Right.
But for now, I mean, I'm not necessarily looking to do huge numbers. I would like to have more available and approachable knives, because I don't like charging that much for my knives, but like a lot of, like, in this, for example, like all of those on both sides are inlaid. It takes a lot of time. And so, and like when I went full time, it was like really a struggle. It's like, yeah, I have to charge this much to make a decent living.
Right.
And I do love it. And there are people out there, willing to pay that price. And I'm so grateful for that.
Right. And was that part of the decision to license some of those designs out to Boker to just kind of get those out there at that more affordable price?
Yeah, my first licensing contract was way before I even considered going full time. It was when I was working for Burnley, and I was doing Blade Show with him, like, helping him with his booth and everything. And he, right, like 3 days before the show, he was like, "Oh, bring a knife just in case." I was like, I got 3 days, like, so I hustled and stayed up late and made a couple knives, because he was like, we'll sit down with Boker and you can show it to him, and it worked out. And then honestly, like I said, it takes 2 years. I forgot about it for a while, and then all of a sudden I see a knife on the Orvis like one of my knives on the Orvis website, and I'm like, oh cool. That's cool. All right, I guess
that's cool.
That's awesome.
So that very first knife that you designed when you were living in the dorm room, do you still have that?
Yes, I do. I don't show it to anybody.
Come on, it can't be like that.
Oh man, I call it the Mammoth Skinner. It is a ragged knife, and it was out of like 1084 carbon steel. It was something I could heat treat by myself, and at the time, and but yeah, for a long time it was I only used tool steels and carbon steels for that reason. But
what steels are you working with now? And are there
now I'm pretty much exclusively MagnaCut. I'll occasionally do some, well, like that knife that you just put up. That's the Rose Damasteel, so that's stainless Damascus. And I'll occasionally use CPM 154 because I love CPM 154, both to work with and performance wise. I think it's an amazing steel. But when I start guiding in the summer, I'm dunked in salt water all day long. I will not have anything but MagnaCut in my pocket.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm like, I got to switch to it. I mean, I got to pay a premium for it, but it's for what I do and for what like I want my customers to do with the knives. Like there's no other option.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it makes sense.
And so with that Boker collaboration on those licensed deals, will we eventually see some of your folders licensed over there as well?
Yes, you will.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I've got 3 or 4 models kind of in the works with them. And I do have one folder model out with them. It's called the Canoe. It's just a frame lock. It's not one of the fish themed ones. It's a blue anodized canoe, and I designed that. Well, I made that was the first folding knife I ever made, and in my last few weeks working for Burnley, kind of my going away gift, he was like, okay, I'm going to teach you how to make a folder by hand, and I was like, wow, that's a priceless gift. So yeah, there it is. And so I already had drawings because I'd been, drawing them on pen and paper before. And so he, showed me how to make that. And so I made 3 or 4 of them and sent one to Boker. And and then they did a great job on that. It's S35 VN on there and all titanium, titanium frame lock. So it's a great knife.
And those bronze accents look great on it too.
Thanks. Yeah, I love blue bronze.
I like that. Yeah, that looks sweet.
The reason it's not really in the shape of a canoe. I do have another frame lock coming out that is more in the shape of it. But I had this blue canoe that I had for years, and I did stuff like I crossed rivers that I really shouldn't have crossed with it, and I caught so many. It was like the most important boat to me, and I really regret selling it. But I was like, man, I missed that boat. I'm gonna call this the Canoe.
Nice.
Yeah.
So speaking of canoe, are you a slip joint guy at all? So there's a pattern called a canoe pattern.
Never been a slip joint guy. I think I only own one slip joint knife, and it was that Cub Scout knife that they give you in the Boy Scouts, with that logo on it. But yeah, never really. I don't know why. I always liked a mechanism that would, lock open.
Right.
And yeah, and button locks are my favorite. I don't make any, because all I know how to make is liner locks and frame locks. But but I might consider a slip joint down the road.
Yeah. Funnily enough, when I was in Boy Scouts, I got the Victorinox, but I didn't get any of those slip joints. I mean, the Victorinox is a slip joint, but more of a Swiss Army knife than just a knife. But yeah, I don't have any of like the Scout knives. Slip joints.
Yeah. So Randy's WSG. I don't know if you can see this because you're on your phone. Randy's WSG, one of our moderators.
I'm out.
He's out. Yeah.
Sorry.
So look, we have all kinds in here. Like me, I like them all: fixed blades, modern folders, slip joints. Jake likes them all, but he's mostly modern folders. But then our audience is all over the place. Like we've got slip joint guys, fixed blade guys. So we welcome everybody here.
Yeah. And like I told you guys before, I would never really have called myself a collector because I never really had the money to collect, and
right.
So like I always had I had a few of my dad's cases, and I would say the nicest knife that I had before I started making knives was a Chris Reeve, and I loved that thing. I never used it, because it was like
right.
Right. But
yeah.
So do you carry exclusively your knives when you're out fishing? Is it always one of your knives in your pocket? No.
I like to support other makers, and I do. One of my favorite things to do is trades with other makers and exchange, I love carrying other makers' work. And I would say when I'm fishing, it's funny. I spend so much time doing like complicated folders and different fish themes and everything. What I carry when I'm out fishing is a skeletonized fixed blade, just because I'm like, I want just a bar of MagnaCut in my pocket. pry something with it. I can do, it's just kind of impervious to a lot more than any kind of scaled or folding knife could be. So
yeah.
No doubt.
Did you make any sort of cool trades that you can talk about at Blade Show this year?
Sorry, what was that?
Did you make any cool trades that you can talk about at Blade Show this year?
Yeah, I did. One of my good friends. Sorry, I'm getting up to walk around to get it.
Yeah, no worries.
I'm gonna show you a couple of knives. I make folders and I love folders, but fixed blades are where my heart is. And I want to show you the first one. This is it's the Cheeker XL from JD Custom Knives, Jordan Dan's.
Yep.
And this is in MagnaCut, and it's just an awesome little workhorse. I mean, it's 5/32. It's just a hunk of MagnaCut, really nice grind and edge on it. I really like removable scales, because if I want to make some trout scales for them, I can,
Right.
But yeah, and I'll show you guys another one. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't trade for this one. I purchased it because I didn't have anything to trade. But I really, as I said before, I worked for Lucas Burnley and for a while, and I learned, like, on the technical side of stuff, I would say, like, pretty much everything I know from, and I still call him, like, once a month that, like, help.
Right.
With, like, this detent's weird or whatever. But I've also become friends with TJ Schwartz, who he's been a designer for a long time, and he went full time as a knife manufacturer, I guess a couple years ago. But he and Burnley did a collab, and this is the turn. So it's Burnley design, manufactured by Schwartz. The camera's I don't know what camera. Yeah, there it is.
There we go.
But it's a really nice. It's funny. It's a really nice skeletonized knife, semi-skinner blade shape. That's one of Burnley's kind of signatures. And the thing about it is, it doesn't feel like a skeletonized knife. It doesn't feel like a spar steel. It feels like, wow, this doesn't have a handle on it. But and just a project that those two did together, I was like, I gotta get that knife. So
yeah, the Burnley booth was wild. I was over there for one of the lottos. My buddy actually won a SciPop. Brad won a SciPop, but the crowd around there was just blocking the alley. You couldn't get through.
Yeah. It's funny. I paid a guy. I don't have any employees, but I had a guy come help me out at the show, and he met Burnley. He had known who Burnley was, for a while, and he was like, "Oh, I think I might buy a SciPop," and I was like, "Good luck, buddy." He didn't know. He didn't know. It was his first blade show. So
get ready to pay that secondary price.
Right.
Yeah. So, how would you describe your design language? And besides the fish theme, the skills.
Tim, I lost you there. You broke up for a second. Can you start over?
All right. Yeah, no problem. My internet sucks, so it's always janky. How would you describe your design language? And would you say that you have a design signature?
I'm kind of all over the board. I would say my knives have to be neutral. Like, they have to be, and what I mean by that is, I don't like bird's beaks. I think some people have giant hands, some people have small hands. I don't like limiting a design based on hand size. And so, like, drift, for example, it's like it has a choil right here. But it's still a pretty neutral design. I don't know right from left. I don't know what I'm doing.
Everything's backwards.
Weird.
Still pretty neutral. Yeah. Big hand fits it. Small hand fits it. The Ortis, my skeletonized fixed blade, which is going to be sold with scales soon. It's just neutral but comfortable. I would say, I would say neutral but comfortable is my go-to. And then, but I also like it to look good and kind of fit my aesthetics as well. So what was the second part of that question?
No, you answered it. But I do have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
So when you start a new design, do you start with comfort and functionality in mind, or do you start with an aesthetic first?
I want to say comfort, but I would say aesthetic. I see, like, a lot of times I'll see something and it'll kind of give me an idea for like a line, you know, and so that's, I would say it's mostly aesthetic, and then I make it comfortable after.
Right. Yeah.
Right. What's the weirdest thing that you've seen that you're like, inspiration for a knife right there?
Ooh, weirdest thing that I've seen. Inspiration for a knife. That's a hard one, man. Can you come back to that?
Yeah, of course. Of course.
I would say it's mostly lines. It's mostly like lines, especially lines of boats. I look at a lot of, I'm here in Cape Cod. I see a lot of boats, and a lot of them have these like beautiful, like, you know, smooth curves and stuff, and they're neutral curves, you know. So I would say it's a lot of boats, and I'm like, man, this is the way that bow like curves up is like really, for some reason, really attractive, you know.
Right.
I bet there's a lot of beautiful. I bet there's some beautiful boats up there in the Cape, huh?
Yeah, a lot that, you know, I don't even want to know how much.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about non-knife stuff? What do you carry on a daily basis that isn't your knife?
I would say I carry a sharpener, especially because I don't know, if I'm mostly a catch and release guy. I don't, especially striped bass, I don't keep any of them. But if I'm going, you know, bluefish fishing or fluke fishing or black sea bass or something, I'm like, and trout too, I just released them. But I'm like, man, I gotta, if I'm gonna cut this thing up, I want my knife to be sharp so I can do the best job that I can and get, you know, clean cuts and all the meat and stuff. And so I carry, you know, just the Work Sharp pocket sharpener. Love this thing. My fixed blade. In the wintertime, I carry a folder.
Right.
But in the summertime, I carry a fixed blade. I feel like that's opposite of a lot of people because
Right.
they're heavier in the winter. But I'm dunked in salt water all summer, so I usually carry a flashlight, and not any fancy ones, you know. Just I like, well, I do I like Streamlight a lot. I like I do carry a 4.7s that I actually don't know where it is. I should find it. But and then usually a driver. I really like, and these things are so cheap. But I'll just use this one that's in my hand. I have a better one, but they're so cheap from Amazon or whatever. But they have all these bits inside.
Oh, right.
And I still don't know right from left. I can't figure that out. Yeah, these things are just so handy, and I have one in my truck, one in my pocket, 3 in my shop. But nice. I would say, you know, as far I have got horrible ADD, and man, I lose things all the time. I can't be walking around with a $200 pry bar. You know?
Right.
Yeah. So, do you have any desire to make any other type of EDC stuff? Are we going to see a Mango Fango pry bar, or maybe a flashlight or a pin, you know, or something?
Mango Fango pry bar is up there. No, before I went full time, I was really into making like weird stuff, because pretty much anything is easier to make than a knife,
right?
Especially a folder. But so I would, and as gifts, I would make like, you know, wine corks with the Brookie patterns on it or something like that. And I never showed those to the internet or something. And I do like, you know, accessories like that. But one thing that I am excited about that I've been working on, and I don't, the prototype is in my truck, I think, is some titanium pliers. And, you know, for fishing. And titanium pliers are huge in the fishing market because they're way stronger than aluminum, and it doesn't rust at all.
Right.
It's sometimes, especially with saltwater fish, you got to put some torque on that hook when you're, you know, when you're pulling it out. And I've had aluminum pliers bend, and, you know, I'm just like, man, I can make some titanium pliers. And so, and they're a company, like a lot of, like, if they are made in the US, like Van Staal is a real company. I'm sure you know of them, Tim. Their pliers cost like $400. I'm like, I could make a better pair of pliers for like $250, I bet. So
Yeah.
Still working on it, but I also want to do some like fun textures and anodizing on them and stuff.
That's cool.
Well, that would be cool.
But yeah, I don't know if I would call them EDC because pliers are, pretty big. But maybe I do some small needle nose or something. But we'll see.
Yeah.
For fishing,
you never know.
EDC,
Those Knipex pliers took off, man. So you never know.
Yeah.
Sometimes all it takes is like the right person to review it or say something good about it, and then all of a sudden everybody's got to have it. You know what I mean? So yeah, that would be cool.
And so your fixed blades right now, they come with Kydex, and you're doing all that in house as well.
I am. Yeah. All my Kydex is I just have a heat press and one of those foam presses from Holster Smith, and it's easy. I've got a couple in front of me right here. Let me put this. I don't know if I can turn my camera around, but I'm just gonna do this.
That works. Oh yeah.
But yeah, these are just fold over. A lot of what I do is just the pancake style. I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for this skeletonized model, I really do like the fold over style, and it's I'll turn my camera this way.
There you go.
Can you still see me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're good.
It's just nice and small and thin and light. So.
Yeah. Have you done any leather sheets in the past, or has it been exclusively Kydex?
Yeah, I used to do exclusively leather, and I enjoyed it a lot. But that was back when this was a hobby, and
right.
Leather. If you're already making complicated knives with a bunch of inlays and stuff, it's leather is hard to scale the same way Kydex is.
Right.
Right now with Kydex, I mold all my knives, and I have a drill template that I'll make one drill pattern basically, right?
Right.
I'll set it over, I'll clamp it on, and I'll drill tiny little pilot holes, and that'll give me my marks for where all the eyelets are going to go. And so it's just a lot. It's a lot more repeatable, I think,
right.
unless I was really invest in cutting dies and things like that. But
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's cheap. It's
right.
cheap. It's waterproof. It's effective. That's why I like Kydex.
Right, helps keep the end cost down too. So
yeah,
for sure.
Shit, I had a question I was going to ask you, and I forgot what it was. What about
was it about my mortgage?
So
income documents, or
some of you guys know, some of you viewers know that I'm a mortgage broker, and so today I was texting with a client about some income documents that I needed, some pay stubs and stuff. And I accidentally texted Joe, and I was like, hey man, sorry, we can't use your income. This is not going to work. We're going to have to foreclose, whatever. And so he was like, what the hell? And I was like, oh, sorry, man. That was not for you. That was for somebody else.
I had a tiny freak out, and I was like, oh, wait, no, this is the guy I'm talking to later. And no.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
That's hilarious.
What do you have a favorite fish to target?
I would say, man, it used to be, it changes a lot, but for a long time it was brook trout, and I still love targeting brook trout, and especially in certain like high alpine lakes, where they're crystal clear and you can see them, and you're essentially sight fishing. But sight fishing has been really my heart and soul the past 5 years, and that's why striped bass have been my favorite to target, because on Cape we've got the largest tidal flat in the world, or in the I guess North America. I don't know if it's the world or not. It's a big tidal flat, and basically we also have 12-foot vertical tides on the north side. Wow. And so when you're walking miles out on dry sand on at the low tide, or mile and a half or so, and then when the tide starts coming in, where you're standing on dry sand is 12 feet underwater in 6 hours. So that's 24 inches. During that time, a lot of striped bass come into the really skinny water, and they stick out like a sore thumb on that white sand. And you see them coming from a mile away, and you throw a big crab fly in front of them, and there's nothing like that for me. So I'd say striped bass.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, very.
Yeah, Tim, you got to get up here and experience it sometime.
Oh man, I'm getting all excited just thinking about it. We don't, mostly redfish around here, redfish, speckled trout, or spotted sea trout technically, but we call them specks. Right here in redneck country. You're from Atlanta. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And like I said, I used to love targeting redfish. They're just, I think they're so pretty. Sometimes those tails get that like blue fade to them, Yeah. Man, it's a sexy fish right there.
Yeah, it would be cool if you came out with a redfish design handle. That would be killer.
I'm working on something.
I'd be all over that one for sure.
Yeah, you do a lot of fly fishing, right? So are you making your own flies?
Yeah. I'd say I tie 90% of my own flies, and then if I have clients break off, I don't know, 10 flies in a day, then I'll have to go to the shop for the next day. I don't have time to tie that many the night before, but yeah, I'd say I prefer tying all my own flies.
And is that part of the guided tour? Do you teach them how to do it themselves, or is it more just about getting out there?
I don't teach them how to tie flies. I really just kind of teach them how to really with the Brewster flats. The most valuable lesson that they get is learning how to navigate that incoming tide, because it can be really dangerous.
Right.
And people get stranded every year because, like I said, where you're standing a mile and a half out there at low tide on dry sand in 6 hours is 12 feet underwater.
Right.
And it, if you don't know your pathways to get back to back to the mainland, it's pretty dangerous. So I'd say, yeah, learning that that skill set of, kind of just the mentality of like, oh, well, I'm waist deep here, but I just went through a chest deep channel to get out here, and the tide's coming in, I better go. So no, I don't teach them how to tie flies. I do teach them how to present the flies in a certain way.
Okay.
When any fish gets in skinny clear water, it's really picky.
Right.
So you got to use very long leaders and do really delicate presentations. A lot of times I'm leading fish that I see cruising by, I don't know, 20 or 30 feet, and I let them run into the fly before I even move it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they eat it, hopefully.
Yeah.
Right.
I've never done any fly fishing. That's a little bit different. We do a lot of power fishing where I'm just burning up as much water as I can.
I love power fishing.
Burning it. Yeah, just covering water. Yep. Tossing something out there and just waiting for them to run into it. That's a completely different kind of fishing.
Yeah, no, I love spin fishing. In fact, when I'd go to Florida, when I lived in Atlanta and fish for redfish, I do mostly spin fishing. Especially, well, a lot of times what I would do is, because I was like, I just want to get on the board. I'd throw a shrimp out. I'd throw like live bait out there and have bait soak in while I was fly fishing, hoping to catch something.
Right.
So let's get back to knives. I think I could talk about fishing, but we might be boring the audience. Is there a particular knife design that you are most proud of? And I know that's a tough question. And why? Why are you most proud of it?
I would say I'm not, in terms of a knife design. Oh, my thumb is covering up the camera. Sorry. I don't know if I would say like a certain design that I'm most proud of. I would say I'm very proud of the kind of my method of doing the fish scales, because it took me a really long time. I wanted it so bad. Like back in the day, I was like, I just want a knife with a fish on, fish pattern on it. And I worked. I don't think I've ever worked so hard, like trying to figure something out, and and I did, and then from there, scaling it and trying to make it efficient. And so I'd say I'm most proud of kind of getting these models, these patterns to be efficient, because they're all structural mosaics, right? They're like this knife has like 40 something inlays in it. Let me turn my camera around here. And I've just found, you know, really fun ways of you know, making it efficient on small scale manufacturing level, and, you know, different milling machines and things like that. And but yeah, and I still get creative with it. Like, I just figured out this method that I call fish fade, where if you look at one of my latest Instagram posts, it's just a few scales pulled up, and where the, you know, brook trout have those orange bellies, and so the scale kind of fades into an orange belly instead of it just being on orange liners, which is, yeah, I'm always learning, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Hang on, I'm looking. Oh yeah, I see it here. Let's see. I think this is it. Let me see if I can share this. I think this is what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I definitely feel like it was a worthwhile investment, because it's what drew both me and Tim to your table over separate years. And immediately once he told me, you know, you were coming on the show, I remembered that knife. It stuck with me 2 years later. So
yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's you know, having something unique is, I think, another thing that I'm proud of. I think, you know, it's easy to like, I love making just plain micarta handles and everything, but like I'm really grateful to have something that's unique,
right,
in that realm. But also, it's, as far as knife designs go, I'd say, like, anytime I come out with a new model, that's the one that I'm most proud of, I guess, at that moment.
right, yeah, that makes sense.
But then I'm like, 2 days later, I'm like back to the drawing board, you know, draw something else.
Yep.
Is this the fish fade you're talking about here?
It is, yeah. There's four scales in my hand there.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, that is cool. We had a question from someone here. Let's see. When you submit a collaboration proposal, do you send a CAD design or like a 2D drawing? How's that work?
Usually it's a physical prototype, so I got to make one, you know, and I have found that it's very helpful to do those submissions at trade shows, because, you know, having a representative of the company hold one in their hand, see how it feels, see what potential, you know, they might get some ideas with it. That goes a long way. And I have submitted a few CAD designs, but I'm very novice in CAD. I didn't start learning CAD until about a year ago, and I've basically just, you know, hopping on YouTube and trying to figure it out. But yeah, I've never submitted a pencil paper drawing, because I'm like, it's so hard to convey an idea in that way, you know.
Right.
So I would always rather make the knife as it's going to be, because the other thing is, like, a lot of these companies, it's not necessarily them making it. A lot of times the world works on OEM, original equipment manufacturing, you know, like Patagonia, for example, doesn't own the factories that their stuff is made in. LL Bean, you know, like all that stuff is, they're like, they go to a factory, get a quote, you know, whatever, and that's kind of what they do. So if they're going to be doing that, I want them to know exactly what I want it to look like, you know. And so that's why I always just default to making a physical prototype.
Yeah.
And that's probably not typical, right?
Buy to a custom knife, you know, it's like, you give them one, they might not go, might not get a contract out of it, but you might also, and, you know, worst case, some lucky person has the knife.
Right. And creating a prototype's probably not typical, right? That's not something the companies see all that often.
Sorry, repeat that one more time.
Creating a custom prototype to give to the companies, that's not something that's typical, right? Like, usually the companies aren't going to get that. It's going to kind of stand out a little bit more.
Yeah, I would say it stands out, and kind of like I said, like, just if I was a company, and I was, you know, taking submissions from designers, I would want a knife in my hand just to see what it would feel like, see what kind of market I think it could fit into, and that kind of thing. And so yeah, a lot of the designers without an engineering background, I would say they, for the most part, make physical prototypes.
Okay.
And then the company, a good company will send the designer a prototype, a sample to approve, and they won't, they wait to produce it until the designer has approved that prototype. I would say the guys with an engineering background and experience, they go straight to CAD, and they mock up a photorealistic rendering and send it to them, and that's what a lot of companies, I think, prefer, actually, because then they can send a file to to their CNC machines or whatever, and make it happen.
Yeah. So when you're designing a new knife, does that design start on paper? Does it start on CAD? Or do you just grab a chunk of metal, you've got an idea in your head, and you go straight to the grinder?
Well, kind of all of it. Only 99% of my designs start on paper with a light board, and just on my desk, just drawing different lines and seeing what I like. And it's pretty rare that I set out to like make a new design. Usually I'll like see a line somewhere and I'm like, ooh, I want to like draw something with that. But and so yeah, it's always pen and paper, and I think it always will be for me, just because that's kind of my creative, way of like seeing it.
Yeah,
it's just different. Giving it like in a parametric modeling, like assigning numbers to lines like that is just not super natural to me. And so usually I will draw on pen and paper first. I'll make a plastic one first just to see what I think. Right. And then from there, I'll put it into CAD. I'll draw it up in CAD.
That makes sense. So I guess coming out of Blade Show now, kind of going into your off season a little bit, but what can we expect next from Mangiafico knives?
So I've got a model launching, a new folder model launching that I think I mentioned to you guys. I'm kind of transitioning away from this flipper, and I'm going into the big canoe, and it is more canoe looking, but it'll be a bigger thumb stud kind of workhorse knife with the trout scales, with different bolster options and things like that. So I'm really excited about that one. I love thumb studs, I think, and I like using washers, so I'm excited to get back into that. And but I'm also very excited about getting this fixed blade going with interchangeable fish themed scales. So the base product will be, and this is mine. It's beat up. It's been in my pocket, but the base product will be this skeletonized knife. And your first for shadow box scales, when I'm going to sell those aftermarket scales, first barrel hole is there, and that's just a 3/16 barrel. And then your second one, can't hold this, it's going to be the second to last slot, and two 3/16 bushings center another barrel. So I don't have a good example because I haven't made a set of scales yet, but I'm just really excited about the idea of kind of making it modular and selling scales independently will be pretty fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that'll be cool. So
I'm also going to do some titanium scales, which I'm excited about too.
Have you looked at like the laser anodizing the titanium? They're able to get so much detail into it now.
Yeah, I don't have a laser. I have an anodizer, so I do all my own anodizing. But it's just in a bath with a power supply, So but I can control, like, on this model, it's kind of hard to see. The liners are anodized green,
right?
And same with the clip there. And on this one, they're blue. I guess the clip is probably the most visible one. Yeah.
Right.
So, but my next door neighbor conveniently has a fiber laser.
Oh, cool.
And so I frequently go over to his shop, and that's usually how I logo my blades. And if he's out of town, I just use my electro etching machine, what most knife makers use.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would like to learn a bit more about about laser anodizing, like because you do it with heat,
Right.
so it'd be pretty fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like you might be able to get some cool like fish scale designs onto that titanium with a laser.
Yeah. And like on some of my frame locks, I don't have. Oh, maybe I do actually. On some of my frame locks, I just have a frame here. I mill textures on them, so kind of hard to see. Let me see if I can.
Oh yeah, I can see that there on the end.
Curling on there.
Yep.
So it's just kind of checkering, and it gives us some nice grip. But also, yeah, on I love just like ultralight frame locks. So this is a skeletonized, just a skeletonized frame lock that I mill the slots in. I mean, this is one of the lightest knives I've ever,
Yeah, that's pretty badass.
Yeah, really sleek.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you. So, yeah, but I do love working with titanium. It's pretty refreshing to not put 40 inlays in a knife handle.
Yeah,
I bet.
I gotta know what that big ass rack, those big antlers behind.
Oh yeah, I used to live in Colorado, Western Colorado, in a little town called Meeker, and one of my roommate at the time, he's a big hunter, and I like hunting too, but I did not shoot that elk. I would never be lucky enough to, but he found these antlers, and I just kind of first I restored them, and then I ended up, I was like, I'm just gonna paint them black because black would be a really nice really nice contrast to my shop, and that's just a snapping turtle shell that I found a long time ago.
Have you ever thought about sawing a chunk of that elk and making a knife handle out of it?
I did. Well, and when I lived out there was this mule deer that shed its antler, a big deer, shed its antler on the side of my house. And cool. I made, it's probably way back in my Instagram, but I made a really big Bowie out of it was a carbon steel. It was out of a farrier's rasp. Out of that antler, which is pretty fun. But man, I hate grinding that stuff. I'd much rather grind G10 all day long.
Yeah, I bet you would. So this is a pretty weird question I've been thinking about. So you said that you apprenticed basically with Lucas Burnley. Mm-hmm. Has anybody ever come to you and said, hey man, I want to apprentice under you? And would you ever take on somebody? Like a young kid was like, hey, I want to learn knife making. Can I hang out in your shop?
Yeah. I would be super open to the idea. This is a small shop. It's a one-man shop. When I have the resources to expand a little bit, definitely. I think like I would love to teach people, especially if, I just want to teach people if they want to learn how to do it. Actually, the guy that I brought to Blade Show with me, he was super interested in making sheaths. I mean, he was interested in kydex, and he really wanted to learn how to make holsters for a lot of his firearms. And I was like, yeah, I can teach you how to do that. With a lot of those, you gotta. It's better to buy the molds for that model because you don't want to. I don't know, putting that much heat on some blued steel might not be great. But
yeah.
But yeah, I told him, I'd show him how to do it. And but in terms of having an employee for right now, I need a bigger space.
Yeah, no,
but absolutely, when I have the resources, I would love to do that. I think I almost dropped my phone. I think that'd be fun for both parties.
Yeah. So we're about up against the clock here, and I know Chad came in a little late, and you addressed this early. But tell us one more time, where can people find your knives? How can they get on your book? When are the books open? And then anything else you might want to talk about or promote before we take off?
Yeah, definitely. So as far as my books are open on a kind of a limited basis. So I'm not accepting orders for the flipper anymore, but I have a new folding model coming out called the Big Canoe, and it's not a huge knife. It's like a 3-inch blade. My books are open for that. And my wait list for folders is about 7 months at the moment. For fixed blades, I would say probably 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
So yeah, but just send me an email. You can go to my website, find my email. That's the best way. Or if you just want to shoot me a message on Instagram, I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So there you go. Anything else you want to promote, talk about, say before we sign off here?
No, man, it was really great. It was great talking to both of you guys, and seeing you guys. You know, you Jake in 2023, and you Tim this year. It was great.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Great to get to know you, and I'm thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on, especially on short notice, man. It's been awesome. And anytime you want to come on, if you've got something you want to talk about, something new coming out, there's an open invitation. You are always welcome, my man. And you guys make sure to send him an email if you're interested in checking out some of his knives. Make sure you follow him on Instagram and go check out the website.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on. It was a blast. And thanks to our moderators. Make sure to support your local moderator by giving him a subscription to their channel. Make sure you watch something, because if you don't watch something, it ends up unsubscribing you. So make sure to put on 30 seconds before you leave.
And thanks everybody in the chat. Thanks for joining us. And we will, as soon as I end the stream here in just a second, we will still be on here. We'll hang out for just a minute before we take off.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Right. Thanks everyone. Thanks, Joe.